Hello everyone and welcome to the next event in our series of In Conversations that runs alongside our exhibition programme. My name is Claire Gomez and I'm the Assistant Director at Workplace Foundation, which is a charity set up by Workplace Gallery to support underrepresented and emerging artists in the North. My pronouns are she, her. I'm mixed-raced cisgender woman. I have brown hair that's tied in a bun. I'm wearing a beige jumper and I'm in a white room with a bed in the background and a fireplace. This week, artist Tayo Adekunle will be in conversation with cultural leader, archivist, curator and museology consultant Arike Oke. Tayo Adekunle is an artist from Wakefield and has recently moved to London. She completed her BA in Fine Art at Edinburgh College of Art in 2020. Recent exhibitions include SSA's 123rd annual exhibition at the Royal Scottish Academy in Edinburgh, COUP DE FOUDRE at Insurgency Gallery and 5 years in London, a quest that's just begun at Wooosh Gallery and with generator projects in Dundee, and Butter on Bacon at Hospitalfield in Arbroath. She recently completed a residency with Hospitalfield in Arbroath and has work in the University of Edinburgh Art Collection in Edinburgh. Arike Oke is a noted cultural leader, a registered archivist, a curator and museology consultant. Most recently, she was the managing director for Black Cultural Archives, the home of Black British history, and is to take up the newly created role of Executive Director of Knowledge and Collections at the BFI in January 2022. Her first major curatorial experience was Perpetual Movement, which combined contemporary art, archives, and contemporary dance at the Lowry in Salford in 2017. While at BCA, she platformed Black artists and curators with an emphasis on archival residencies. It's my pleasure to introduce Tayo Adekunle and Arike Oke, who will be in conversation this evening. Towards the end of the conversation, I will join and ask some questions. For now, I'm going to disappear into the background and operate the images. Welcome to you both.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Claire. I'm going to just briefly describe myself before handing over to Tayo to introduce herself and how the visual description of her. My pronouns are she and her. I am also mixed race and I'm sitting in a room in front of a grey curtain with a light coloured shirt and a necklace of wooden birds. Handing over to Tayo to describe yourself.
My pronouns are also she, her. I'm sat in a white room with a blurred background. I'm a Black cisgendered woman. I'm wearing a black cardigan and a silver necklace.
Beautiful. Okay, well, I really am quite excited to chat to you about your work, Tayo. I really couldn't get up to see the exhibition, and that's partly because of COVID, but the exhibition was online, which is fantastic. And I'm also very pleased to hear of all of the other work that you've been able to do. So I think, first of all, I would like you to just let me know a little bit more about how that's been for you, because I know you only graduated just before the pandemic hit us, and then clearly went straight into trying to navigate how to present your work in a way that would still resonate with people that weren't able to physically go and see it. And then from then you've been able to transition into more in-person exhibitions. So just to open us up before we go deeper into your work, how's that been for you, the pandemic period, beginning your career in an unprecedented pandemic?
I mean, it was very stressful at first. I think I didn't really know what to expect because we were sort of just told that uni was shutting down, and I was coming to the end of my degree. Had obviously gone through uni thinking that we were going to have like a physical degree show and everything, and then none of that happened. So at first I was like super panicked, but then I think honestly, like I think being able to have like digital, like using displaying my work on digital platforms has actually been really beneficial, and I've really enjoyed it. Being able to like reach people who probably I wouldn't be able to reach beforehand, and just getting in touch with like other platforms that I might not have been able to get in touch with beforehand has been really cool. And also just exploring sort of what it means, what a digital exhibition actually means, because sometimes a digital exhibition can be as simple as like an Instagram like profile, and then it can be as complex as say like this exhibition like a digital rendering of a space. So it's been pretty fun to experiment with that. And then moving from digital to physical exhibitions, it's been strange because I feel like for the past year I haven't seen any of my work physically. So yeah, seeing my work on a like actually on a wall for the first time since graduating was a bizarre experience. But it was nice to I think I've definitely missed the sort of interactive element of like seeing people interact with my work, also seeing my work alongside other people's work and that relationship. I've definitely missed that, and that was really fun, sort of like the social element of exhibitions. It was cool.
Okay, great. Well, your work is actually really powerful in terms of how you frame the image and the contrast that you're using and the colors that you employ. So on the screen at the moment, I can see the Venus Noir part of your work. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about, because this particular exhibition has different sections, but do you want to tell us a bit more about the Venus Noir section, just to introduce the concept of it? You're the main subject in those images. Also, why did you use yourself? And what is the concept of the Venus Noir?
So Venus Noir was sort of, I guess, my first sort of exploration of Black history. I was looking at how Black women are represented and perceived sexually, and sort of looking at like Western art history, as well as like more of like a contemporary context, or sort of like where those ideas of like Black women's sexuality come from, what they're rooted in, and then what that's sort of transformed into. So yeah, the series is basically, I feel like each image sort of represents a section of history or like an idea that I was looking at. The series covers quite a broad range of topics. So from like Reclining Venus, which we can see here, which is drawing from like reclining nude imagery, and sort of how in those reclining nude images, even though yes, they were like objectifying women, you never see like images of Black women. They're always holding like a secondary role. So we're sort of looking at like what these perceptions of beauty mean, why we're not seeing Black women in these primary roles, but then also sort of taking back the agency through self-portraiture, allowing, I guess, I don't know if you could call it objectification. I don't know. I guess I'm putting myself in the position of objectification, but I'm doing it to myself, and I'm also representing my body in a way that I am comfortable being seen. So yeah, sort of reversing the idea of like agency there, I guess.
So in some of the other works that are not shown in this particular image, you are naked, you are nude, but in the reclining nude, you've decided to cover the body.
Yeah.
Why did you? Yeah.
Well, basically, I just, well, in some of the other images, it's only like my back half that's ever seen. I wasn't comfortable showing like the front half of my body, or like any form of sort of like, I guess, like full frontal nudity. So yeah, this is as far as I was going to go. It wasn't really like a
political.
Yeah, no, it was just like, I don't, because with this series as well, I became a lot more comfortable with my body, because this was the first time I was shooting myself nude, really. So yeah, I guess I was happy sharing my back, but not my front.
Well, I think it's quite interesting, because in this one where you are looking straight out, like directly out of the picture, and the way that you've draped the fabric is very, very reminiscent of the kind of old masters painted style of draping fabrics. But to have you staring straight out like that is quite, it's not exactly confrontational, but it certainly feels like a demanding gaze. So it's almost asking that question of, you know, you, the viewer, might expect to see the full frontal, but this image is very much on your terms. And I think maybe this is a point where you could talk a little bit about the makeup choice as well that you use in this series.
Yeah, so I've, like, throughout the series, I'd overdrawn my lips to reference blackface and like blackface imagery, and it was just another part, or I guess like another layer of this like representation of Black people that I'd seen historically, and how blackface was used to ridicule and mock Black people, in not only in terms of like, oh, they're like stupid and dirty, but also from a sense of like Black people being ugly, which is one of the things that I was sort of challenging, like this idea of like who gets to say what's beautiful and what's not beautiful. So yeah, I sort of made the decision throughout the series to keep the overdrawn lips, especially with this image and Crouching Venus, because I wanted to sort of create, like, I wanted my references to be clear, basically. So to create this sort of, yeah, like image that was reminiscent of like old masters' works, but then I guess create a layer of like discomfort in the image as well. And yeah, me directly looking at the viewer is sort of challenging them to ask questions as to why I've done these things, and then also make them think about what this means historically and why I'm referencing those things all together in one image.
Yeah, I really love this image, and I think it does draw a lot of questions, because you could have chosen to show your back and use a mirror to look out in, as you know, in that very famous work, but you've decided to directly challenge the viewer in that way, which I think is really interesting. I mean, so the drapery of the fabric, so that is a direct reference, I think, to the old masters. Is that quite deliberate?
Yeah, I basically just like, I'd been looking at like old like Western art history paintings and like reclining nudes, and yeah, I'd seen them all on this like draped fabric. I tried taking some on my bed, it didn't really work. So the staging is deliberate. I think the end result was not necessarily what I had in mind when I'd set out to make this image, but I think when I first started trying to make this work, I'd gone a little bit too complex. So I think just like keeping the everything white on a Black background, yeah, in my head made it a bit more contemporary. I don't know.
I think it does make it contemporary.
Yeah.
If we kind of go on to another one in the series, thank you. Oh, perfect. So this kind of reflects what we've been talking about. So what I wanted to ask you about with the one that we've just seen, and perfect for this one, is that you've made these art history references, but in your work, the focus is so entirely upon the body of the woman in the image. So you've taken out all of it's just a black background. In the other one, it was a purely white sheet. In this one, it's an undecorated plinth and a black background. So the body feels to me like it's activating the image. So do you want to tell me a bit more about the presence of the body, the black women's body?
Yeah.
Specifically seems to be something that you return to again and again throughout these works.
Well, I think like I knew I wanted the series to be about this like presentation of Blackness, and also it sounds silly, I don't really want there to be any distractions, so the whole thing was sort of about like, yeah, embracing my own body, embracing my own Blackness, and it was, I think, like stylistically, with all of the sort of like I guess extra objects in the background, I was really like, this is my one of my first time shooting in a photography studio, so I wanted to try and keep things as simple as possible, whilst trying to make some form of like, I guess, like effective imagery, but yeah, it sounds really vain because it was just me in the images, but I just wanted like my body to be front and center without any sort of like, I guess, like extra clues or extra like signs around the images, all sort of like I guess like extra clues or signs to what I was talking about, I wanted to put on my body, so that there was like this investigation around my own body, without any of the distractions, I guess.
And I know when we spoke about this before, it's actually significant for you to be referencing Venus as a goddess as well. So could you tell me a bit more about that? Because I think we'll return to it later on in our conversation. We talk about Orisha as well.
Yeah, so I wanted to look at the figure of like the goddess Venus, because she's always shown as, well, first of all, she's shown as a figure of beauty, but she's always shown as white and slender with like long flowing hair, very sort of like Eurocentric standards of beauty, which I wanted to address in the series, because I obviously don't fit that category. And this is just another one of those, I guess, sort of comes into the whole thing of me wanting to, yeah, embrace my body, embrace my Blackness. I think as well, there's like the Hottentot Venus. So I was looking at various different meanings of the word, I guess, as well. So there was like the Hottentot Venus, who I referenced in one of my other images. She was given that name. So Hottentot was a derogatory term for the Khoi people in South Africa. And they used Venus along with her name to make fun of her, because there's no way that a Black woman in their minds could be seen as like worthy of that name, basically. So I guess I wanted to take that back a little bit. And then yeah, sort of like she's like Venus typically is like this, she's like the goddess of love, I'm pretty sure, and she's meant to be just like, yeah, ethereal being. So I kind of wanted to just play around with that and see what, looking at those images, because this sculpture that I'm referencing is of Venus or Aphrodite, and same with the reclining Venus picture that we were talking about before. So yeah, I think through my research I just started with the word Venus, and then we were sort of just like rolling with that and was seeing where it took me.
Sure. Can we have a look at the next two images, please? Great, and the next one. Okay, so this takes us on to thinking about again, the sexualization, which I think is very relevant to see how Venus has been portrayed. The goddess Venus, the original goddess Venus, has been portrayed throughout history, like gradually becoming this idealized body, but then idealized body from, I suppose, a patriarchal viewpoint, right? From the viewpoint of whoever is commissioning the picture, whoever's painting the picture, whoever the ultimate audience is for the picture. And I think we'll come back to talking about Sarah Bartman, the also known as the Hottentot Venus, because the sexualization of her and how she may or may not have tried to assert her own authority and write her own story in some ways. You know, perhaps she was a businesswoman, perhaps not. But this image is, I think, the first that we're looking at this evening of a mammy figure. So I know you approach the idea of the mammy, understanding like the desexualization of the Black woman's body. So yeah, tell me a bit more about how this image comes about and the relationship of the mammy in this narrative about how Black women's bodies are seen and used.
Yeah, so I discovered the figure of the mammy when I was looking at just stereotypes, like historical stereotypes of Black women. So I came across like Jezebel and I think it was Sapphire and Mammy. And yeah, the Mammy figure was pretty contrasting to a lot of all the other ones because she seemed to be the only one who was like desexualized, which was quite jarring, especially when I'm reading a lot, but when I was reading a lot about how Black women are like overly or hypersexualized and sort of like they're known for different attributes of their bodies, whereas with the mammy, she's sort of not even allowed to have any form of sexuality because she's just expected to leave her own family and then care for the children of her like masters, and so yeah, she could potentially be like a wet nurse as well, which I guess is just another form of like Black women's bodies being used, but it's in a completely different way. So yeah, I felt she was really important to include because it was just I guess it showed the breadth of this the representations of Black women and how it doesn't always need to come from like a overtly sexual point of view, or like criticizing this overtly sexual, like these overtly sexual representations. But yeah, I'd also seen a lot of images, so like Aunt Jemima products and like the cookie jars and like the spice jars that all were made from like the mammy figure. So I feel like she's like a very recognizable figure. I feel like even if people don't even know who like the mammy is, you can kind of see, like you kind of know who I'm talking about from this image. Yeah,
completely. I think this image speaks a lot about patriarchal viewpoints, but I'm really interested as well in how you've lit it. It's almost like heroic lighting. I think in this image, you know, she's not in the background, she's not shaded, she's not looking down, she's looking up and out, and she has the way the light hits her face kind of really highlights, you know, this almost rising feeling. And the color that you've chosen for the shawl that she's wearing is a color that I think is quite reminiscent of how the Madonna, how the Virgin Mary is often portrayed in art as well, and in historical art images. So I think this is quite a complex work that you put together. But I think certainly it kind of champions something about women. Even so, as much as you're kind of referencing and recontextualizing Venus and giving Venus the goddess as well as the Black woman in the images, the agency over the viewer, the power over the viewer. This is almost bringing back for those images of the Madonna where she's the parent of God, she's the mother of God, but is again desexualized. You know, there's nothing sexual about the Madonna technically, and similarly for the Mammy, which is a real, you know, it's an experience that was experienced by human women over and over throughout history, and perhaps this image to me feels like a tribute to their strength and resilience to be able to carry on with that. So I love this picture.
Thank you.
Let's you're welcome. Let's have a look at some more, please. Okay, so I think this one and probably the next one I think are quite interesting, again, from what we've been saying all about women's bodies and how they're used. The body's almost removed here. So could you tell us a bit more about the decisions?
Yeah, so I wanted, it was strange. So with these images, I was sort of looking at how there's just, I don't know, when people talk about, or often when people talk about like Black women or Black people as a whole, there seems to just be like a lack of identity there. And also with the sort of like all of these stereotypes remove people's like individuality, right? Like through putting people in these boxes. So I basically, and this is also something that I was sort of negotiating at the time, sort of like, I don't know, where do I fit in? Where
do you fit in? Where do you fit into the art world? You know, what's going to happen next?
So I wanted to sort of, yeah, I feel like it's yeah, I wanted to, well, I was definitely drawing attention to the lips. I also wanted to highlight my nose, because this is another sort of like typical Black feature. And then, so this is just meant to be like a generic Black woman, I guess, or just like a figure of like an unnamed Black person. And then the next image is of me, where I guess there's like more elements of, I guess, what you could give as part of my identity. And yeah, I guess, I mean, that's how I was wearing my hair at the time. So it sort of points to just how I liked to dress and everything. But there was also, yeah, I still kept the like red lips all the way through, because it was sort of looking at, I'm still carrying or negotiating those stereotypes that people keep putting on me. So yeah, things like the angry Black woman, for example, that is something that you have to negotiate like all the time. And then someone also pointed out to me how like the pointed red lips sort of look at or like seem to reference this like trend of overdrawing lips, like cosmetic like trends.
Right.
And I found that really interesting, because that is definitely something that I don't know. So growing up, I was so self-conscious of my lips, at the size of my lips. Right. And then yeah, seeing how that's now become like a trend is like pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So
like this thing that you're made to feel is not attractive, this thing that you're made to feel is not ideal, suddenly women around the world, if they're quite wealthy or even not, are starting to try and create this, exaggerate their features to try and attain something, some ideal that you were told wasn't acceptable for you.
Exactly, yeah. And it's just like I think it sort of all ties together. I feel like the with these sort of like Eurocentric ideals of beauty, like who gets to say who gets to say what's like beautiful and what's not on whose body as well. So yeah, this was just like another thing of me just like, okay, like I love my body. I'm going to learn to love the way that I look. I look absolutely fine. It's fine.
Yeah, completely. I think in these two images, especially the bigger lips that you have drawn, really start to reference the Jim Crow figure as well. I think it starts to really bring it home, you know, that concept and that idea of trying to make a cartoonish figure out of a Black person. But yes, okay, we the images now we can see are in starting to reference the Hottentot. Do you want to say a bit more about what you found? I mean, how did you come across this piece of history in which it was quite acceptable to just sort of refer to women's bodies as a Hottentot? I mean, I worked at Wellcome Collection, and there are some images in there that don't have a trigger warning before you look at them, but they're what do you call it, gynecological images, and they're labeled as Hottentot as well, but they're not a full shot like this. They're the gynecological images of women's sexual organs. So it's at one point it was even, you know, a medical term that people would be using. So but how did you come across that term, and how then did you decide to incorporate it into what you were making?
So I think just like in my sort of like string of research, as I was looking for more representations of Black women, it was my tutor. He told me to watch the Black Venus film, which is about Sarah Baartman. I didn't know going into watching the film what it was going to be about at all. It was horrible. Definitely recommend watching it if you haven't watched it, but it was horrible.
But with that warning, right? Like I feel like sometimes these things are, people do not quite understand the effect that hearing that story and seeing it and having it, you know, just presented to you, documentary or reading her story. I don't know if people appreciate the effect that it has on you when you are also a Black woman.
Because I feel like, I mean, Sarah Baartman has been a central figure, whether like obviously like in this image or just sort of in the background. She has sort of been a central figure in my work for like since I started doing work like this, just because I feel like how her body was treated while she was alive and after she died, I think to me it sort of just exemplifies everything that I'm sort of talking about in my work, and it's like the most basic form of objectification, and like the most obvious way of like ridiculing and making a spectacle of like Black bodies. That I feel like it like her story just exemplifies that so strongly, that I think it's important that a lot of people know about her, because then it puts everything else into context, I think. Like a little bit. I think that's, I'm like, I keep like returning to her story, and I'll always talk about her, just because I mean, it was horrible reading about those things. And even just like, so she was put on display because of the size of her bum, and they also thought that she might have extended labia. So they were that was like a kind of sneaky investigation that a lot of the doctors were trying, like they were trying to get a look basically for the longest time. So this image basically, the series basically came, these two images, basically came about because I'd been looking at her story. While I was looking at her story, I found the image of Kim Kardashian
I was going to ask. Kardashian up.
So like break the internet image with the champagne glass resting on her bum. And then I found the artist who made that. And I found the original image. So that image is a remake of one of his old images. And that the old image is basically exactly the same, except it's a black woman, a naked black woman. And she's got like a pointy, like, I guess.
Like a cone hat.
No, it's not a hat. It's like he's gelled her hair into a spike on top of her head.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then, yeah, no, she's completely naked. And yeah, she has a champagne glass on her bum and then a bottle going above her head, like the stream of champagne going above her head. And then I researched more about this artist. And I remember the day that I found him, because I literally stayed up to like 3 a.m. reading about him. I got so angry.
Oh, no.
But he basically, he has a fetish for black women. He's got a book called Jungle Fever, which is all about his fetish for black women. And he uses his work to manipulate either digitally or like in like an analog sort of fashion, or sometimes through like what are they called? Polythene, like clay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like modeling clay. Like he might like remodel or change the size of different features of these women's bodies to fit this description he has of what the perfect woman looks like. So one of the things that he did, like he gave his like girlfriend at the time was his model, he did a life-size cast of her, scaled it down, but then made her boobs and her bum like enormously bigger to achieve this level of perfection. So that's why I enlarged my bum to ridiculous amounts in this picture.
The big reveal.
Yeah, but like, I mean, he, yeah, I thought it was quite interesting because sort of this, the order in which I found like all of these references. So I'd gone from like looking at Sarah Baartman to then looking at Kim Kardashian, whose figure, I guess, links to Sarah Baartman's, and that interest links to Sarah Baartman. And then, yeah, finding out the artist was someone who also, like, the way he treats Black women's bodies also links directly to Sarah Baartman.
So there was like just a direct descendant of those traveling showmen, basically.
Yeah. It was gross.
Yeah, it's quite uncomfortable. Your images, so the two that we just looked at, I think in these, the plinth begins to have a different meaning. So the first plinth that we saw, the body on the plinth is sculptural, I think. And it's looking, the person, you know, I know it's you, but the person in the image is like looking straight out. It's a sculpture, I think so anyway. And it's a sculptural thing, and it doesn't, it feels like an artwork on the plinth. In these images, the plinth begins to feel more like the person is being examined. And is that the intention there, to make it become like the plinth becomes like almost more medical or even more sinister? It starts to have resonances with, you know, the trade in enslaved Africans.
Yeah, so I wanted to put myself in a plinth because I was looking at as I said, this break the internet image of Kim Kardashian, and I'd seen people sort of referencing or like comparing the box that she was stood on to the box that enslaved Africans had been put on before they were sold, sort of to put them on display, like, here, by this person. I wanted, that's why I used the plinth to sort of reference that. Also to sort of reference the stage of what Sarah Baartman might have been put on when she was put on display at sort of like, like entertainment. And then, yeah, I also was sort of drawing from Sarah Baartman's history and how her body was sort of examined, especially after she died. Oh my gosh, I've forgotten his name. I was going to say Leonardo DiCaprio. That's not who I'm talking. Leonardo da Vinci.
Let's cancel Leonardo DiCaprio.
And sort of like his like drawings of like the anatomy of
Right.
man.
Sure.
So that was something that I sort of wanted to play around with as well. But I wanted it to take like the plinth was taking sort of like a more like scientific role here, rather than like sculptural or like artistic. It's not a nice role, basically. Yeah.
I think it's quite powerful to see it just against the other images that we've seen so far. To see these two, it feels very almost shocking, and I think to have that engagement with the eyes looking straight out at us in the other images, and then to come to this one, I think it does really underscore that some of the points that you and some of the references that you're making there. Okay, let's have a look at some more pictures. This is fun. Okay, so I think we're going into more of the Orishas, would you say, like looking at Umoja? Is that what we might look at next, do you think?
I think so.
Let's see what's coming up. Oh no, it's the
artifacts images.
Yeah, the artifacts. Yeah. Okay, well, I'd be interested to hear, because of course I'm an archivist by profession, and until recently I managed and directed the Black Cultural Archives. But also when I was a trainee archivist, I worked at Birmingham City Archives, which has this collection of anthropological photographs collected and photographed by Sir Benjamin Stone. And some of his images are trying to capture local traditions around the country. But there's also, in that kind of Victoriana image, especially referencing images that would have been in Wellcome collection artwork there as well, there's this idea of the camera when it's first coming into use by these globe-trotting gentlemen, of being a way of just documenting everything and trying to piece together some kind of anthropology, but looking at anthropology in a way that doesn't in any way connect with the cultures of the people who are under the lens of the camera. And I think some of the images that you found were actually taking that a step further and fraudulently, I guess, or maybe not fraudulently, I don't know whether they admitted it in their images, but start to kind of they're sort of fake recreations of backgrounds, is that right? Yeah. So just that's kind of a lot of context that I've given, but just to kind of give you a shortcut to talking about how you've interacted with these images and how you found them. So, were you going through some archives specifically to find these images? Did you happen across them? How did that interaction with these images come about? And then maybe how, like, what were your artistic decisions to making these collage works?
So I found these images when I was doing research for my dissertation. There was a book that I was reading, and one or two of these images appeared. So I was able to find them on the Paul Getty Museum website. These were some of the only images that I'd actually been able to find as sort of examples of the colonial or anthropological photography, because a lot of archives, though they digitized their archives, like I couldn't get access to these images, or like where there was a space for the images and they had a title, but the actual image wasn't there. So it's quite hard because I knew that I wanted to sort of draw directly from source material, so that yeah, I thought it was quite important, especially because I was just referencing such heavy imagery, that I wasn't just making up poses, that I was actually like drawing directly from the source material. So yeah, with these images, I don't know, I feel like I just kept going back to them. I ended up, sounds weird, developing quite a strong relationship with these photographs. So I knew I wanted to use them, actually like directly use the photographs, whether that be me taking the figures of the women and creating a whole new image outside of like the staging here, or what I ended up doing was inserting myself into the photographs. And yeah, I wanted to sort of mirror these poses. I guess I almost sort of imagined like there was like an imaginary mirror, even though that doesn't make sense because I'm not reflecting them, I'm doing exactly what they're doing, but like showing the relationship between how the way that they've been put on display and they've been categorized has informed ways that I, or women, Black women nowadays, are sort of categorized or treated. But yeah, because of the staging as well, like I kept going back to these images because there was one of the things I was researching in my dissertation was how for the entertainment of European audiences, this like European audiences at the time were sort of hungry for this staging of the exotic. So there was just like these images are taken in Paris, in the Botanical Gardens in Paris. So this, I don't know, it's really strange because at first look, I thought that they were taken in South Africa, which is where these women are from. But then you sort of start to see, I don't know, like little bits, like the bench in the background, and like the I don't even know what you call it, the border of where like the palm tree is, and then it becomes very familiar that that is actually botanical gardens.
You start to think, oh, okay, well, if it is in South Africa, then she's in a botanic gardens, and well, that's okay. But actually, it's just in a studio in France, right?
Yeah. And like you see like some of the other images, there's like pieces of fabric that have been like laid on the ground for women to stand on, and then in other images you see those pieces of fabric piled up in the background. So like what I imagine happened,
you can see like the roof of the
and the roof
the farmhouse or whatever it is.
Like it really reminds me of the botanical gardens in Edinburgh, which I know that's not where they were taken, but like it's weird because they all just look the same.
That's actually kind of an interesting thing, right? Because at that time period, everyone was sort of borrowing from these European cities, these big European cities, I mean, when I say everyone, we're kind of borrowing from each other. So in Birmingham, you have like Joseph Chamberlain trying to recreate a great avenue in Paris, or you have like Argentina, which again looks like a European city because the Europeans are trying to like recreate their city, and you have the Botanic Gardens, which kind of look very similar to each other, or Central Park, which was in New York, which was based on, you know, the European landscaped parks. So there is like a very homogenized visual urban planning, if you like. And then you have this photography studio who is trying to create some kind of taxonomy of African women's bodies, by placing them in these strange surroundings, but removing their clothes. Like what's going on there?
I don't know.
And then but I think I mean, we're not going to figure that out because that's very interesting bit of psychology that maybe someone needs to look into for the anthropology of the white man in Victorian Edwardian times, which I'm sure would be fascinating. But for you in these images, so in the one that we just saw, you have the African print cloth in a kind of traditional wrapper style, and then here you wearing modern Western clothes. So tell me a bit about your choices and how you were questioning and interrogating and just presenting yourself here.
Well, I mean, I knew I definitely wanted to appear clothed in the images to contrast and sort of challenge these women's like nakedness, also like their lack of agency with having these pictures taken. I chose sort of a mix of like the African fabric and then modern clothing, I guess to create some sort of like this sense of time. So sort of having my clothes, having myself in like the wrapped cloth could really be any point in time, because I mean my mum used to wear a wrapper like that, and I know my grandma used to wear a wrapper like that. So like it's something that's been passed down through time, and then the contemporary clothing is like just presenting as like modern day. So I guess it was almost just to like show this how this relationship between Black women and the women in these photos stretches like across all of time, not just like now and not just like in the 60s. It's like all Black women everywhere basically. But I definitely wanted to keep myself clothed, I think, just to contrast this like
because it's not as I kind of used the word earlier, fraudulent, and I think that is what's happening in the original image that you're collaging here, because it feels like reading the image now, which might not have been the intention of the person in the studio, who knows, but it certainly feels like they are trying to they're trying to kind of give whoever looks at them an idea that this is the women in their natural habitat to sort of, do you understand, like that, but what you're doing is so there would be no reason for you to be unclothed in this, because the original story that's being told in the image is not true, and what you're presenting back in the image is something more true. So the wrapper is timeless, in 100 years African women will still be wearing it because it's practical. It's timeless. It's it's at the peak of its evolution, that item of clothing. So anyway, I guess I'm kind of putting words in your mouth perhaps by suggesting that you were trying to represent these women in a way that actually more closely represents their potential heritage. This is a really interesting one, though, that we've got in front of us now, with the woman who with a very non-standard body by how we understand women's bodies, how we have been brought up to understand women's bodies. What are your thoughts on the choices the photographers made to include this woman and her body?
Like, I mean, it's
it's like a stupid question, because you're like, what?
It's like,
what is happening?
I mean, there's just so many things. Like her body reminds me of images that I'd seen of Sarah Bartman, and when she was put on display, the fact that she's turned to the side makes me think that there's some sort of like, I mean, there's just like two things going on. It's like a documentation of like different types of bodies, which is gross in itself from like a scientific point of view. But then there's also like an emphasis of like her most prominent sexual features, which would make sense because these sort of images are circulated as pornography. So it's just like it's just like gross on so many levels. Like it's just I don't know, and like the image is blurred as well, which makes me feel like she was moving, which then makes me feel like
she definitely must be moving her face, right?
Yeah,
she's either moving her face or the photographer's deciding to focus on a different part of the picture, right? But I think she must be moving her face because the palm fronds are in focus, like everything's in focus.
Everything's in focus. And yeah, I mean, like, yeah, with her turned to the side, I don't know, it feels so passive. Like, because in some of the other ones, not that I'm saying that any of those women wanted to have their picture taken, but like some of them are looking at the camera, whereas this one, yeah, she's just been sort of positioned in this way and isn't even looking. Like, it's just great.
I think with the other ones, you're mirroring the position of the person in the photo, but this one you are a mirror to her position, right? And it feels more protective.
Yeah,
you know, you don't have your back to her looking out of the frame, which you would be if you were mirroring what she was doing. You're turned more towards her and you're looking out at us, and that does feel more, to me it feels more like you're trying to put her under your protection. That might not have been your intention.
No, I get those I get those feelings also.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah. No.
You might not have needed it, but like it definitely feels, you know, and you're standing on the same piece of cloth as her. It's a very moving image.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like with all of the images, I wanted to sort of, like obviously I'm trying to illustrate this relationship that we have, like, theoretically, but then I kind of also wanted to I don't know, a bit of camaraderie, I guess.
Right, it feels like it feels like camaraderie. And what, so I forgot to ask you, when were the original images from? Like what time period is it?
Like 1880s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at some more. Great. And look at another one. Okay, this is I love this one actually, because I think that the way that it almost is like that you're showering together. Do you see what I mean? There's like, there's a sort of the way, if without the contemporary person, but the contemporary person in this image, if that taken out, it feels like an image of someone in a forced labor camp. But with you in the image, it feels like there's some kind of system. So I think that's really interesting. And I'm just giving my reactions to it, but you can say perhaps like whether it's what the intention might have been towards this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think just all of them. So I've seen a lot of images where women had to put their hands like above their heads because it sort of like emphasized that, like, if they were naked, it just drew the view of attention, kind of. And like to like the chest area. So I mean, I guess similar to the other one, it was just like I wanted that to be like I was just using myself as a partner for whoever was in the image to sort of just to stand alongside them, because whatever happened to them wasn't nice. And I don't know. Yeah,
these images are fascinating. I mean, this could be, you know, a PhD or something, really, to try and figure out more of these images. And it's interesting that you share that they were probably used as like pornography,
Mm-hmm.
because it feels like the women have been shaved.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not looking at the images, I'm also like not convinced of their hair as well. I feel like some of them are wearing wigs.
I'd never even thought about that.
Feels like it to me.
That hairline
Some
looks
of these
quite
are wigs.
perfect.
Yeah, it's a strange one, unless it's been
Yeah.
shaved, but she's been shaved in other places.
Oh
dear. Anyway, let's look at another one, because this is like, I feel like, almost the darkest part of your work. And then we transition. Let's go to the next one. We can see a full screen. Yeah, so then we transition back to these, again, like more, I don't like to use the word empowered because I think it's so cheesy nowadays. But these ones where the agency is back and the agency is there, and you are creating a new narrative. So it very much feels to me, we're looking at these images chronologically from the series that you were making. And when we spoke the other day, you were talking about how there's these different routes of investigation that you were following. But it does feel, I can definitely see development through the images, so you're kind of, there's like research, and there's the series that we just looked at, which is very dark and very much kind of so the first set of images is kind of the original male gaze, if you like, is actually removed from them, and you've taken notes of context, but then represented those contexts. So the drapery, removing the background, having the lighting as very powerful lighting, and then you go to the archive images where you're almost in conversation with those photographers of the past. And then you move to this series, which I'm going to give you a chance to talk about it in a second, sorry. But you move to this series, which feels like you are starting to gain and to start to put in a very different visual language, which is new. So it's almost like that this is the evolution that comes from those first two stages. But what is that anywhere near how you think about this next series?
Well, with this series sort of came alongside the Artifact series. So when I graduated, I ended up making like 2 series to be displayed alongside each other. And with these ones, I was sort of just looking at it's like the same sort of like context, but more on sort of like the idea of like the spectacle and how it was like Black women be used for like entertainment, and like there was this like huge like hoo-ha around them when they were put on stage. So I mean, I knew that going into my final year, I wanted to make some really colourful imagery. I'd like not really worked with colour that much beforehand. So that was very important to me. It was also quite important to me to start connecting more with my Nigerian background and my Nigerian heritage. So just like, I don't know, even just like looking through all of these fabrics, sort of figuring out how these fabrics worked, just felt really good, even if I wasn't really getting much context from it. Like it was just like a nice way to reconnect. And then so I mean the collage way of working sort of came from not being able to make like build sets. Like I didn't really have a solid concept going into each image, in terms of like what do you call it, like the way the image was set up, like framing and everything. So I went to botanical gardens and like photographed different elements that I thought I would want to use, and then was sort of able to make my image on my laptop later on, which I guess also sort of ties into this whole staging that happened in the other images as well. Like I quite liked faking it, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, so you can thank that pornographer of the past for
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the next one. Thank you. Okay, brilliant. So, okay, well, I think tell me a bit about this. What's happening?
Well, this image and some of the following images are all drawn from anthropometric style photography, which was another form of colonial and ethnographic photography, where instead of measuring people up against like an actual measuring scale, they used to like photograph people with like their arms out and stuff to like get photographic evidence of like bodily proportions for people of different categories and races. They then just started putting people together who were all from like the same community. They put them together in one frame and photograph, like position the bodies in different angles so that they could have like direct comparison of how that certain category of body measured in different areas. So yeah, this is sort of what I was looking at here. And then yeah, so I added like the measuring scale and everything. I think as well the like horizontal lines of the fabric sort of give this idea of like measuring again and this scale. And then yeah, this one I had no idea what this image was going to look like when I started making it. I think this is one thing I do like about this whole like collage process, is just like I have no clue what anything is going to look
what's
like
going to happen
when I sit down on my laptop. I just sit and take I'll like plan out a bunch of poses, and then I'll just try and make something work in my laptop in post, which is quite fun.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Let's look at the next one, please. Okay, so in some of the things that you've been talking about, I've also been remembering again from my time at Wellcome. So before photography, artists would go to, you know, see what autopsies and things like that take place, or would have human models physically posing so that they could go and look at proportions. But they were books of drawings created from these kind of live autopsies or whatever. In one of the books, I can't remember what it's called, but it was one that was basically used as a almost like a medical textbook. There were drawings of a man of African descent, I guess. And then in a later edition, they're exactly the same drawings, but he's white, but they're exactly the same body, but they've changed his ethnicity from one edition of the book to the next, which is just nothing to do with your artwork. But I thought this is something that it brought up for me, looking at the kind of measurements on there. Yeah. I was talking to one of the researchers at Wellcome who was looking through it, and he said it was for an American audience. So they didn't want to have a black man in their medical textbook. But it is the same body, you know. He had them side by side to just like, that was his research he was doing, like, is it the same body, or have they got, but it is exactly the same body, they just change the colouring and give a different face.
Well, that's really just weird. Very interesting, isn't it?
Okay. Oh gosh.
Like, so yeah, people just wouldn't, like, I mean, there's just so many ideas that I guess would go against this, like the fact that could even possibly be like a thing that happened, of them like just switching out two bodies because they're just like, oh, we're all so completely different. Not really. That's
definitely part of it, but much easier to do in the days before photography, you know. You just color it differently. So yeah, so that's kind of in a way, you know, what was being brought up for me in the last image and with this one. Again, because you're showing these, it's very much like a medical textbook in a way, you know, you're showing these different poses. Yeah, that's the end of what I was saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like the different poses all come from like directly from colonial photography that I'd found, and like examples of like this anthropometric style photography. So like even just like the two of me sat with my hand like this, like cradling my face. Me and my tutor were trying to figure out for ages what it was, why they made people sit like that. What we decided was that maybe they were trying to get a measurement of the forearm in comparison to the head.
Right.
But not sure.
That's a good idea, actually.
Yeah,
that might be what it is.
Yeah. But yeah, no, all the poses are taken like directly from images that I found.
Okay, let's see another one, please. Okay, so kind of similar approach, right? But what is the plant that is kind of coming, because it's almost the plant image starts to dominate in this picture.
I'm not sure.
Is that just it's just composition?
Well,
this is a beautiful composition.
This is one of the things, like when I set out taking pictures of the plants, I was trying to think whether I wanted to go for like I guess what you could call like environmentally accurate plants, or whether I just wanted to use plants that I thought would just like work compositionally. And I decided on just like the aesthetic, because that's what was done in the other images. This like these women being surrounded by just like random exotic plants that might not have even been like native to where they were from, might not have even been found in most countries.
Yeah,
so
just a little iron bench next to
exactly. So I sort of was just like, I mean, it did make my life a lot easier anyway, but I was just like, I didn't want to like I guess the plants were literally just there to like point to like the images that I was like drawing from, and also to start this discussion of like what was real and what's not real, and
completely. So I think, you know, this set of images is quite reminiscent. You know, when we were speaking before about your influences, and when you start to work in color, is this more where you see the influence of some of the artists that you started to research, like Harmonia Rosales, you know, that kind of thing? So tell me a bit more about the kind of visual influences that helped you move into collage and move into working with color and African textiles.
So with like coming into this project, I was looking at Harmonia Rosales, sorry, Awol Arisku, and Seydou Keita. I knew that I wanted to start, as I said before, working with like more colorful imagery and more complex imagery. I've been following the work of Harmonia Rosales for a while, and I wanted to start sort of including some more like symbolism in my work, drawing from like more historical imagery, and having like these like colors and signs in there and like patterns. When I started looking at like colonial photography, I'd noticed that a lot of these women were being photographed on plain white backgrounds, so there was sort of like no indication of like they were like isolated from their environment and like their background. And And alongside finding those images, I also found the work of Tayo Adekunle, who was a Malayan photographer and was like photographing his subjects in front of like heavily patterned backgrounds. All of his photographs are in black and white, but like it was really interesting because you were seeing these people being photographed on these like heavy, in front of these like heavy prints and like bold prints, but then they were wearing like plain Western clothing. Or sometimes you'd have like sort of like the clash of the two different prints, or like 4 or 5 different prints in one image. And I just found it really like visually compelling, but then also was like a really good visual, I guess, like it's really visually encapsulated what was going on in the country at the time. So sort of this like battle for identity and like the battle between like their culture and Western culture, and how people were sort of like embracing more Western culture, or I guess, yeah, just like this negotiation of 2 different cultures. And then, yeah, with Owl Rescue, was just a lot of his work again, which is like very colourful, was also drawing a lot from like Western art history, and like making it a bit more contemporary, and like bringing in like Black identities through that. So I feel like, I mean, these artists are people I think I'm going to continuously go back to, because I just really like their work. I really like the way they negotiate elements of Black history, and are able to just sort of visually represent various different ideas in one like photograph or painting.
Okay, great. May you go forward an image, please? And another, please. Great, because I think this starts to, it's fantastic. This is just flowing perfectly, Tayo. Because what I wanted to start asking you about is really how your identity is beginning to be represented in your work. So I know that, like me, I am Yoruba, and I'm also from Yorkshire, and there are not that many Yoruba people from Yorkshire, not really. So you kind of grow up in a very, you know, I grew up on a housing estate in Hull, like white working class, was all around me. And then I went to a predominantly white school, which is a fee-paying school afterwards. So I've had like these different levels of involvement in Northern white identity, and a much lower level of involvement in my Yoruba heritage and, you know, my Nigerian family. So for me, that's something that I personally, as I go through life, trying to find some kind of balance, trying to investigate more about, trying to understand how I feel about that balance. And I know from what you've been saying about those artists that you are inspired by, that's also some, not the whole bit, but for them, but you know, that kind of identity, that kind of questioning of identity, which to a greater or lesser extent, whether you're in the continent of Africa, or whether you're African American, or you're Cuban, or you're Brazilian with Yoruba heritage, or you're Jamaican, British, or what have you, you know, how does that all kind of relate? And I think that this next set of images that we'll see as in our conversation, I think maybe starts to speak to your experience of balancing out different parts of your identity.
Yeah, for sure. I think like it's quite tricky, because so this image is talking about like the triangular trade and the transatlantic slave trade, and it ties together I guess like all 3 continents that were sort of involved, so but these are all like, I mean, for me, like, so I would say I identify as like Black British, and I'd say that's a very complex identity to have for a lot of people, because yeah, like I grew up in a Nigerian family. I was taught like loads of things about Nigerian culture. My parents speak Yoruba in the house, but like I can't speak Yoruba. But like I don't know how much I identify with Yoruba culture, because I was like yourself, grew up in a predominantly white community and went to predominantly white schools. So yeah, I think like through this series, this like image specifically, I'm just starting to re-engage with elements of Yoruba culture that I haven't been taught about. So sort of like this is Yemoja, one of the Yoruba Orishas, which is basically like a deity, and just yeah, like I don't know. So the figure of Yemoja, she holds a place in like Afro-Cuban practices and like Santeria as well, which is just like an sort of, I guess, another exploration of like the effects of the transatlantic slave trade, because it was brought over from Nigeria to South America because of the transportation of slaves. But then because of this, she holds this sort of like, in some practices, she's like combined with the figure of the Virgin Mary, which is a figure that everyone knows. And then I feel like this is also sort of where I was drawing a lot from like Harmonia Rosalis's work with her like use of like religious iconography, and yeah, but then sort of like making it my own with like the use of like different fabrics and stuff, and still working in my own style. But yeah, I feel like, I don't know, I couldn't pick this image for a while because my relationship with it keeps changing. Like at first it was like
really
all about like negotiating trauma and like inherited trauma, and there was a lot of pain in the work, which I think there still is, and definitely I mean, it's about the slave trade, there can't not be pain in there.
Yeah,
but like I don't know, I think it's also pretty celebratory for me, just in terms of like reconnecting with a culture that I haven't really been encouraged to connect with so much. And yeah, I don't know, it makes me really happy the fact that like I'm even just learning more about Yoruba culture now, and it's it feels like I'm just like discovering more about myself through learning about this other part of me, I guess. Yeah.
I love it. It's cool. Let's see what's next. If there's any, I can't remember where we are. Oh, that was the last one. Okay, well, we'll go back to you. Actually, shall we bring Claire back to the conversation now? I think that's a good point. But thank you so much, Tayo, because I think that's actually a really lovely way to end our part of the conversation and talking about how, you know, you've actually kind of traveled through to arrive at a point where you yourself are beginning to kind of surface in the work.
Yeah, to
a certain extent.
Yeah, I think like I think just the way that I've been using my work at the moment has just been sort of like illustrating things that I'm learning about like Black history, and it definitely started as more vague, and now I feel like it's becoming like more and more like personalized to me, which is nice.
Thank you so much both. That was a really rich conversation. And then following on from what you were just saying too, how do you think that has changed your relationship to both your body and your heritage, like going through this process and having these really strong images and also so much rich research and investigation into each topic?
Well, I mean, the relationship with my body has like, so when I was doing like Venus Noir images and stuff, because there's just so much context to like things that I had learned or had been like taught about my body, like culturally, or just like perceptions that I had about my body. It's been really nice to sort of know where they come from and understand that like they're not really rooted in fact, so like I can unlearn those like negative things quite quickly, which is nice. And then yeah, with my heritage, it's just like it's been cool just to like connect with it. I think just like it's been kind of sad in a way to like know that there's this like huge part of culture that I guess has been like erased for some people, and yeah, it feels great to have like the opportunity to actually be able to have the time to like dig back through different like bits of history and like just I don't know, discover loads of different things. And then it's also been really interesting. I was talking with someone the other day just like how like Yoruba religion and like Yoruba Orishas link very closely with like Greek and Roman mythology. And I don't know, that's interesting to me. So I kind of
that is
like,
interesting.
yeah.
Well, the world was pretty small in ancient times. People were in touch with each other.
Exactly. So I think that's something I definitely want to look at, is just like how like the links between like I guess like the Western world and then just like bits of like Yoruba Nigerian culture and like the links between the two, because it seems that there are quite a lot of parallels. Yeah, we'll see.
Definitely, and I already think you do that in your work anyway, because there's so much reference of situations throughout history, both contemporary and historic, like you're talking about Kim Kardashian, and that image was really influential, and then Sarah Bartman, which is such a long time ago, but both of these things are really relevant and still important, and these topics are rooted in the present, and then bringing the past and the present together makes it it enhances it more to make it feel like it's constant. And I wondered, do you think that there's been any change in people's perceptions?
I think it's hard for you to answer, because in a way that was a digital, we've been through a period where you haven't been able to engage with your audiences, but have you had any feedback from people that might sort of suggest anything that helps to answer that question?
Well, I think people it's weird, because like one of the main reasons like why I hope people take from my work is just like an opportunity to go educate themselves on like the histories that I'm referencing. So I think it's been excuse me, illuminating. I just could take some water.
You've been in the hot seat tonight.
I think it's been like illuminating for some people to be able to like I don't know, like some of the images have been able to like help provide context to what otherwise would have just seemed like maybe like quite an airy fairy statement of just like, oh, the reason you're obsessed with black bums is because of like colonialism. But like being able to like provide context to a statement like that, I think has been able to help people understand a bit more. And then I mean, I think just around the like wider discussion of like BLM and everything, people have been educating themselves a lot more nowadays anyway. I think now more than ever, which has been great to see. So I do think people's perceptions are changing, or even maybe if I think people just have a lot more understanding now because people are taking the time to actually like educate themselves, and they understand that it's not a thing that like racism isn't new, or like just the perceptions, like the way people are perceived isn't new. And there seems to be a bit more of a greater understanding that like it is rooted in this history, and like in order to understand how we operate as a people now, we need to understand where those like ideas came from.
Perfect. I feel like, yeah, absolutely. There's no more. I think you can encapsulate that perfectly, Tayo. Thank you.
So I think that concludes our evening, and just a big thank you to both of you. It's been really, really interesting to listen to your conversations, and there's so much to take away from it. So I just want to say thank you, and good night and goodbye to everybody.
Thanks so much,
Thank
Claire.
you.
Thanks, Tayo. Lovely conversation. Speak to you all soon.
Bye.